Strangers in the Night, Two Novellas by Ruskin Bond. Read by Suyash Mohan. For Absent Friends. Introduction. Let it be said at the outset that this book is not intended for the school classroom. Over the years, a number of my stories, some of them written especially for young readers, have found their way into the school or college curriculum, both in India and elsewhere. I have always enjoyed this aspect of my work, but that does not mean I must never write for adults or that I should refrain from crossing the borderlands of physical passion and human desire. Just now and then I let my hair down and indulge in a little gentle ribaldry or a tale of desire under the deodars. But you can relax, gentle reader. I am not about to offer you a plateful of porn. The Sensualist is the story of a man enslaved by an overpowering sex drive. But it takes him on the downward spiraling road to self-destruction. You could even say it has a moral. A Handful of Nuts is about myself at 21, an age that is important to each one of us. It is an age at which we have to come to terms with our own natures if we are to survive the rigors of life's long journey to the end of the night. 21 was a year of special significance for me. I had published my first book. I was full of hope and ambition, prepared to take chances, and I saw myself as the great lover, as indeed most of us do at that age. I now believe that great lovers are born, not made. As I grow older, life seems to grow more comical, and I find myself better suited to playing the clown than the romantic hero. At 21, we all aspire to be romantic heroes or heroines, often with disastrous results. It's an awkward age. You need either money or a beautiful figure to get away with it, and I had neither. I wrote A Handful of Nuts over a period of 3.5 months last winter, when icy winds and occasional snowstorms kept me confined to my small abode in the hills. I felt a longing for the hot, languorous summer days of my youth, and in this short novel, I tried to recapture something of that time and place. Please do not take it as a straight autobiography. Some of the people, places, and incidents were real. Others, creatures of my imagination. It is said that a good storyteller is someone who has a good memory and hopes that other people haven't. I don't think my memory is better than anyone else's, but it is selective, as a writer's must be. And if I have neglected to include some important friends in this novella, it is only because I have saved them up for another tale. Nor is The Sensualist in any way autobiographical. There is a Jekyll and Hyde in each of us. Two personalities warring with each other. And to that extent, it reveals something of the author's psyche. Interesting if true, said Mark Twain in a different context. And if not true, still interesting. The Sensualist was written some 22 years ago and first appeared in the Bombay magazine Debonair, where it was serialized over 3 or 4 issues. One summer's day, while I was enjoying the shade of a maple tree outside my Mussoorie home, a policeman appeared before me with a warrant for my arrest. It was a non-bailable warrant. The policeman was not from the local station. He had come all the way from Bombay to apprehend me. There was an obscenity charge hanging over me in that fair city, and the warrant declared that I was absconding from the law. That was the time of the emergency, and writers and journalists were being given a rough time. Debonair had just been taken over by Vinod Mehta, and he was greeted with a flurry of prosecutions. A sympathetic Mussoorie SDM used his discretion and granted me bail, and a couple of months later, I took the slow passenger train to Bombay, where I appeared before a very stern and apparently uncompromising judge. The case dragged on for a couple of years, during which I made sporadic appearances, once in order to plead not guilty. In the middle of it all, the public prosecutor died of a heart attack. Those who had lodged the complaint, which led to the criminal charge of obscenity, gradually lost some of their enthusiasm. debonair made a vigorous defense, and writers of the caliber of Nissim Ezekiel and Vijay Tendulkar spoke up for me in court. The judge must have seen some merit in my story, for he gave us all an honorable acquittal. I believe a 60-page judgment reposes in the archives of the Bombay courts. Nevertheless, I'd been put on the defensive, and I did not publish the story again until about a year ago, when Penguin India decided to include it in the omnibus volume with which they honored me during their 10th anniversary celebrations. Outlook's literary critic remarks that it unveiled an interesting complex aspect of this author, and hoped that there would be more in the same vein. I don't know if A Handful of Nuts is in the same vein, but it is certainly another novella, a form that seems to suit my style and temperament. Only the French, and just occasionally the Americans, have really done justice to the short novel. The British prefer the proliferation of the longer novel. The British publishers won't look at a novella. They want their money's worth of words. But the short novel, with its compositional economy and homogeneity of the conception, has its place in the scheme of things, as Conrad demonstrated in The Heart of Darkness, The Shadow Line, Youth, and The Nigger of the Narcissus. But he was a Pole writing in English. Although I cannot aspire to be another Conrad, something from the master may have rubbed off on me, because in the Sensualist there is a certain brooding quality and a pessimism which is alien to my nature. I have also used the device of a narrative within a narrative. The recluse in the mountains is my other self, my secret sharer. There is none of that in A Handful of Nuts, in which I am my usual irreverent self. It is a self-portrait of the author as a sensitive and occasionally mischievous youth, or rather of a mischievous elderly author looking back on his innocent youth. Ruskin Bond, April 1996. A Handful of Nuts. 1. It wasn't the room on the roof, but it was a large room with a balcony in front and a small veranda at the back. On the first floor of an old shopping complex, still known as Astley Hall, it faced the town's main road. Although a walled-in driveway separated it from the street pavement, a neem tree grew in the front of the building. And during the early rains, when the neem pods fell and were crushed underfoot, they gave off a rich, pungent odor which I can never forget. I had taken the room at the very modest rent of 35 rupees a month, payable in advance to the stout Punjabi widow who ran the provisions store downstairs. Her provisions ran to rice, lentils, spices and condiments. But I wasn't doing any cooking then. There wasn't time. So for a quick snack, I'd cross the road and consume a couple of samosas or vegetable patties. Whenever I received a decent fee for a story, I'd treat myself to some sliced ham and a loaf of bread and make myself ham sandwiches. If any of my friends were around, like Jaishankar or William Matheson, they'd make short work of the ham sandwiches. I don't think I ever went hungry, but I was certainly underweight and undernourished, eating irregularly in cheap restaurants and dhabas and suffering frequent stomach upheavals. My 4 years in England had done nothing to improve my constitution, as there too I had lived largely on what was sold over the counter in snack bars, baked beans on toast being the standard fare. At the corner of the block near the Orient Cinema was a little restaurant called Komal's, run by a rotund Sikh gentleman who seldom left his seat near the window. Here I had a reasonably good lunch of dal, rice and a vegetable curry for 2 or 3 rupees. There were a few other regulars, a college teacher, a couple of salesmen, and occasionally someone waiting for a film shown to begin. William and Jay did not trail me to this place, as it was a little low-brow for them, William being Swiss and Jay being Doon School. Nor was it frequented much by students or children. It was lower middle class, really. Professional men who were still single and forced to eat in the town. I wasn't bothered by anyone here. And it suited me in other ways, because there was a newsstand close by and I could buy a picture.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?